I found a disturbing tape that my wife and her ex-husband filmed on their wedding night. My name's Jose, and I, 49M, have been married to Kelly, 42F, for 6 years. We met at Mexico City International Airport in 2014. Both of us were waiting in a restaurant for a late-night long haul to London. The pretty stranger quickly clocked my black epaulets, each bearing 4 yellow stripes, then swiveled in her bar stool to smile at me. It was an unconvincing smile. I remember that. She looked like she'd been crying. And I also remember her asking, "Are you flying somewhere far, far away?" When I answered, Kelly smiled and revealed that she would be one of my passengers. I don't remember much of my response, truth be told, but I quipped about her being in safe hands because I just read Flying for Dummies. And she laughed politely as if it were the first time she'd heard that joke. In all honesty, as scummy as it seems, I wanted to impress her. She captivated me. I still remember every last thing she said, even after all of these years. Oddly, however, I only have fuzzy memories of my own words. My mother used to tease that Kelly had put a spell on me. Anyway, without being prompted, the sullen woman told me her story, that she'd booked an early flight home in the middle of her honeymoon because her husband, Michael, wasn't the person he'd purported to be. He was an abuser, a liar, and he's making me tell lies too, she said. He emptied me. That bizarre and unsettling choice of words would ring in my head for the next decade. And only yesterday, after finding and watching that cursed tape, did I finally understand what Kelly meant. I think 10 years ago, she might have been warning me to stay away from her. I think that had been a glimpse of the real Kelly, but I'm not making sense. Let me explain. Everything could have ended with that conversation. We could have parted ways. I wish we had, but I was compelled to see Kelly again. I know that's awful. It's not a habit of mine, falling for a married woman. I just felt something indescribable, something I now realize may not have been butterflies at all. I had a week in London before the return flight to Mexico. During those 7 wonderful days, I frequently met up with Kelly at her hotel, said that I had to check on her. She was too frightened to return to her hometown in Cambridge, as she believed that Michael would be waiting for her. And she ignored my pleas to report everything to the police, which I'll admit seemed strange even at the time. We quickly formed a bond, and things didn't end when I returned to Mexico. I visited Kelly every time I flew to England. After she moved to Brighton, a month later, I started taking the train to her new apartment. Believe it or not, I once took a short-haul flight from Paris to London just to see her. A year later, when our relationship inevitably became something more, I'd already made the decision. I wanted to move to England to be with her. I'd been training to become an airport technician, and I secured a job at Heathrow in late 2015. By early 2017, Kelly and I had bought a house together. In 2018, we got married. I'm obviously fast-forwarding through the ins and outs of our relationship, but Reddit isn't built for essays, is it? I'm here to tell you what I found yesterday morning whilst tidying a storage cupboard. Kelly's clusterfuck of clutter, as I like to call it, came tumbling out of the open door and washed over my feet. A stark reminder that weekends shouldn't be wasted on chores. If I'd been relaxing on the sofa, I might not have discovered what I discovered. Maybe Kelly would have disposed of her own clutter, and we would have lived a happy 50 years together. But I was the one wading through the puddle of forgotten belongings. And what caught my eye during the tumble was a camcorder, surfing atop the junk heap, which spilled out of its bag, landed at my feet. I picked it up and chuckled. I knew Kelly and I were old, but not that old. I had no idea she owned such a relic. And curiosity got the better of me, obviously. Who wouldn't want to check the contents of a spouse's dusty tape locked away for who knows how many decades? When I plugged in the device to charge it, an error message displayed on the ancient screen. I thought I'd been thwarted by tape or hardware degradation. But I fixed everything, unfortunately, by cleaning out filth from the tape slot. Then I rewound the recording and pressed the play icon. The white, pixelated text read, October 9th, 2014. For Americans, that's September 10th, 2014. And I quickly realized that was a week before I first met my wife. Everything slotted together horribly when Kelly stepped out of a hotel bathroom in wedding lingerie. I realized what kind of tape I'd found. Don't think less of me for watching. It wasn't like that. Even degenerates, I assume, don't want to watch the person they love share such intimacy with someone else, let alone an abusive ex-husband. And Michael was abusive. Kelly wasn't lying about that, but she'd only ever told me fragments of the story. So, even though I expected a raunchy sex tape, I wasn't watching for that reason. My eyeballs weren't springing from their cartoon sockets. Well, okay, I was watching the video keenly, but fear rendered me wide-eyed. Not lust. I just knew that something was wrong with the hotel room. The only natural thing in the footage was Kelly. And as I watched my wife sprawl across the bedsheets, waiting for her filming husband to join her, I eyed the room's cream-colored walls. I didn't give a rat's rear about the interior design, but something hidden in the paint made me sick. You wouldn't understand unless you'd seen the video for yourself. Then something in my head started to ache sharply, much like a migraine brewing behind my sockets. But it wasn't that. It was a painful urge which prompted each of my squeaking eyes to twist. I looked, without even wanting to look, at the edge of the screen. Searched for something that was only just beyond both the border of the video and Kelly's vision. I wanted to scream at the younger version of my wife as she lay still, as she watched Michael with caving dimples and a provocative grin. I wanted to scream at her to run, though I didn't know why I wanted to do so. That was the most terrifying thing of all. I didn't fear the obvious horror of watching my wife and her ex make love. I feared something else in the room, something I didn't understand. "Get rid of that camera," Kelly whispered, before wagging her index in a come-hither motion. Michael's heavy breathing was not the breathing of a lustful man. It was the labored breathing of something hungry. Hungry in a way that neither food nor sex could satiate. "We need to preserve this moment," Michael said. Kelly rolled her eyes. "Is that right?" In response, the man stopped breathing, and my wife's face changed. Her sultry smile morphed into not a frown, but downturned lips. Lips hanging open in the same horrified expression that I must have been wearing whilst watching the tape. Michael hacked, as if bringing up a hairball, then promised, "I'll put it down." He placed the device on the dressing table and walked over to the bed. But Kelly did not thank him. She whimpered and recoiled, not due to Michael leaving the camera recording. I don't even think she'd noticed its red, blinking light. No, my wife was still frightened because she sensed a presence. Not her husband, not the room's seedy atmosphere, not even the claustrophobic nature of the walls. She sensed the same thing that I sensed, though neither of us knew exactly what we sensed. "I'm not in the mood anymore," Kelly whimpered as Michael climbed onto the bed. He hushed her, stroking the backs of his twitching fingers against her trembling cheek. "Don't be like that, darling. It's time to consummate." Then Michael gasped like a punctured tire and shot his head towards the empty corner of the room. He nodded slowly, but neither I nor the recorded version of Kelly saw what he saw. "If I must," he told the empty air. Then came something I still don't know how to explain. The plaster rippled as something behind the wall pressed against it. Tried to get out, like a hand forming a shadow puppet. Something about the shape was illusory. Could have been a man. Could have been a monster. Its outline rapidly changed from a tall thing with arms and legs to a misshapen blob of indiscernible segments. After less than a second or two of the wall bulging, its plaster flattened again, and the living shape was gone. Kelly screamed in synchronicity with me, but she hadn't even noticed the anomaly. She was staring unblinkingly into her husband's eyes. "What's wrong with your face, Michael?" she cried. What terrified me was that, even when the camera caught his face, I didn't see any supernatural change in Kelly's former husband. Didn't see anything other than a very human man. One with an unkind smile and dead eyes, perhaps, but still a man. However, Kelly saw something I didn't. Still, all of that pales in comparison to what happened next. Michael thrust his hand into Kelly's open mouth, prompting her eyes to open just as widely. Her husband's whole forearm plunged into her jaws, muffling her series of screams. Then my wife wriggled and squirmed as Michael propelled his upper arm down her throat, pushed deeper and deeper until his shoulder met her lips. Another impossibility followed, one that I still don't know how to put into words. Michael pulled his arm out of Kelly's mouth, and when his fingers resurfaced, they were holding something. Not my wife's innards, not the innards I had expected, at least. There wasn't a speck of blood on the man's hand, but a wet, translucent film. It looked a little like either saliva or lubricant, but again, that wasn't what horrified me. Michael's fingers were clutching the hair of a human head, a head sitting at the top of Kelly's throat, like some wretched birthing canal. My wife's lips opened unimaginably wide, as did mine. I gawped in incomprehensible horror. She gawped simply to make room for that adult head to emerge, then gawped wider to free a set of shoulders and a torso. I uttered an entirely silent scream, believing that, if I were to produce even the tiniest sound, something from within that footage would hear me in the future. But a slight whimper escaped once I'd identified the head. It was Kelly. A cloned version of Kelly was climbing out of her lips, some fleshy Russian doll. That younger version of my wife was birthing an exact replica of herself. And the clone was screaming too, for it didn't ask to be born. The original Kelly's skin started to crinkle, crease, and shrivel into something smaller. The clone undressed, shed her former skin, reduced the original Kelly to a silky dress that dropped onto the duvet. Then the clone, the new Kelly, fell into Michael's arms, and she eyed the empty skin suit beside her. She may have been screaming through those open lips, but a white sound was drowning all other noises, a prickly static that dug into my flesh. That maddening racket was accompanied by a gangly shadow moving across the wall of the hotel room's entryway, a shadow with the vague appearance of a man. But the tape cut out before the stranger came into view. Hard on my tongue, I hurriedly thrust the camera back into the bag and tossed it against the back wall of the cupboard. And mere moments later, there came the sound of my wife's car pulling into the driveway. So I tried to compose myself, tried to forget the hellishness I had just seen on her old wedding tape. I looked out of the window at the driveway, but she wasn't in her car. And when I turned back to the kitchen doorway, I screamed. There Kelly stood, hounding me with blank eyes and tight lips, with a face horribly white, yet no whiter than usual. I realized I was simply seeing her true self. It had only taken me 10 years to open my eyes. "How did you come indoors so quietly?" I tried to ask, though nothing but a series of hoarse whispers sounded. "Jose," Kelly began before lifting the camera bag she'd inexplicably acquired. "We were meant to be decluttering, darling. Why would you want to hold on to this?" I tried to answer, but I was startled by my wife's sudden step towards me. A solitary step, followed by a gasp and a jolt, much like her ex-husband in the video. Then Kelly looked towards an unoccupied corner of the kitchen and said, "If I must." Upon hearing that echo of Michael's haunting words, I ran, barged past my wife, who seemed either unprepared or unbothered by my escape. I ran out of the house, leapt into my car, and drove away from my life. I've been on the road for more than a day, stealing bursts of sleep in service station car parks. It's currently 2 in the morning, and I was just woken by the sound of white noise. Not from a playing videotape, but from the world around me. That static drowned everything for one horrendous minute. I didn't want to look out of my driver's window, but there also came that familiar strain behind my eyes, a coded warning from my brain. And when I sat up to look outside, I locked eyes with a large truck parked a couple of spaces to my right. That was when I yelled until my vocal cords gave out. The side of the vehicle rippled in much the same way as the wall of the hotel room, rippled to form the outline of a man inside the storage compartment. He was pressing against the truck side, trying to push through the metal. The shape quickly lost its definition. Then it became nothing at all. All that remained was an abandoned truck in a near-deserted car park. I don't know what to do. Please help me before that thing finds me, before it pulls something out of me.